Donald Trump alleges massive fraud in Democrat-ruled California amid probe into daycare scam in Minnesota, another blue state. In a Truth Social post, Trump wrote, "There is more fraud in California than there is in Minnesota, if that is even possible. When you add in election fraud, then they are tied for first. 2 crooked governors, 2 crooked states." California Governor Gavin Newsom has hit back at the president, calling Trump a deranged, habitual liar whose relationship with reality ended years ago. Trump has unleashed a massive crackdown on Minnesota, the Democrat-ruled state, in the eye of an alleged daycare fraud. The U.S. president has linked his immigration crackdown to the fraud in the daycare center allegedly run by Somali immigrants.
Ilhan Omar should be sent out of our country. She should not be allowed to be. She married her brother, either to stay or to get him into the country. And yesterday she, I guess, made up a story. She said the police attacked her son. They stopped the car and the police said, "We didn't attack him. We never stopped him. It was a made-up story." She's a con person. She's full of con. She says, "Zero. She should get her the hell out of our country." That's what we want.
This is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy when you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white. That's never happened once in my whole damn life. And I think everybody in this room knows what they're doing. So we're here today to say enough of this. We're here today to stand that Minnesota will protect their neighbors, to tell those folks who are out there who are too scared to send your children to school, who are too scared to visit a local business, who are too worried about maybe picking up extra food during the holidays at the food banks. We will do all we can to make those corridors safe for you, to make sure you're able to do what you need to do.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi said that federal authorities have been quietly investigating large-scale fraud linked to Minnesota's daycare and social services sector for several years, resulting in charges against nearly 100 individuals since 2022. Speaking through a series of posts on X, Bondi said at least 85 of those charged are of Somali origin, with more cases expected as investigations continue. She noted that more than 60 defendants have already been convicted in court. Bondi publicly credited independent journalist Nick Shirley for drawing widespread attention to the issue after he released a viral video outlining what he described as more than $110 million in alleged and proven fraud involving Somali-owned daycare centers in Minnesota. The video has amassed over 120 million views on X. According to Bondi, Shirley's reporting helped spotlight what she called the scale of misconduct occurring under the watch of Minnesota's political leadership. More prosecutions are coming, she wrote, adding that the Department of Justice, DOJ, has been building cases for months. The Attorney General said the DOJ has been working closely with Minnesota's U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen, who was appointed in October, as well as several federal agencies. Bondi named Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, Housing and Urban Development Secretary Scott Turner, and Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer as partners in the ongoing investigations. Her post highlighted multiple Minnesota-based cases that have already resulted in convictions or sentencing. One of the most significant cases cited was the Feeding Our Future scandal, which Bondi described as the largest COVID-era fraud case in the United States. The federally funded child nutrition program claimed to have served millions of meals to children during the pandemic. Few, if any, were fed, Bondi said. According to the DOJ, 78 defendants have been charged in the case so far, with 57 convicted. Bondi said 72 of those defendants are of Somali descent, while 5 remain fugitives believed to be in Africa. Federal prosecutors estimate that between $300 million and $400 million in taxpayer funds were diverted overseas to East Africa and the Middle East. The alleged ringleader, Kenyan national Abdiaziz Shafi Farah, was sentenced to 28 years in prison and ordered to pay nearly $48 million in restitution, according to an August DOJ statement. Farah had claimed to have served 18 million meals. Then acting U.S. Attorney Joseph Thompson said at sentencing that Farah had robbed this country blind after benefiting from U.S. citizenship, education, and public employment. Another defendant, Abdi Majid Mohammed, was sentenced last month to 10 years in prison and ordered to pay nearly $48 million. Bondi also disclosed allegations that some defendants attempted to bribe jurors during the Feeding Our Future trial by delivering bags containing $120,000 and notes urging acquittal, accusing the government of racism against Somali culture. In separate cases, Bondi detailed an alleged Medicaid fraud involving autism treatment programs that expanded from an expected $20 million cost to nearly $200 million. She claimed some parents were incentivized to enroll children in daycares posing as clinics in exchange for kickbacks. Another Medicaid scheme involving housing services for seniors and people with disabilities allegedly cost taxpayers $125 million annually. 8 individuals have been charged for allegedly creating fake companies and billing for services never provided. Thompson said the scope of fraud uncovered in Minnesota was unlike anything he had seen in his career. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem confirmed on the same day that federal agents were deployed across Minnesota as part of what she called a massive investigation into child care and social service fraud. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz's office did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Meanwhile, Shirley said he has received serious threats following his reporting.
The first indictment, United States versus Hassan Ahmed Hussein and Ahmed Abdirashim Mohammed, involves the owners of Pristine Health LLC, a housing stabilization services company here in Minnesota. These 2 defendants enrolled in the Housing Stabilization Services Program, purportedly to provide services helping people who were facing housing instability find and maintain stable housing. They did no such thing. Instead, they submitted fraudulent claims to Medicaid for services that they did not actually provide to those individual clients. In all, they obtained more than $750,000 in Medicaid payments through their fraud scheme, much of which they used for pretty extensive international travel, including to London, Sydney, Australia, Istanbul, Turkey, Dubai, and several locations in Saudi Arabia. The second case being announced today is United States versus Kamil Omar Salah, the owner of Safe Lodgings, Inc., another housing stabilization services company. As with the other defendants, Mr. Salah enrolled in the housing stabilization program and began claiming to be providing housing stabilization services to people that were leaving drug and alcohol rehabilitation facilities. Again, he did no such thing. Instead, he just submitted fraudulent claims for services that he never provided. He submitted more than $1.4 million in fraudulent Medicaid claims, which he used to purchase more than $150,000 in cryptocurrency, as well as to fund his lifestyle. We learned recently that Mr. Salah actually fled the United States after his company received a grand jury subpoena for records related to its participation in the Housing Stabilization Services Program. The 4th and 5th defendants are charged in United States versus Anthony Waddell Jefferson and Lester Brown. And this case is slightly different. This is an instance of what's essentially fraud tourism. Mr. Jefferson and Brown were residents of Philadelphia who had no connection to Minnesota, except for they heard that Minnesota and its Housing Stabilization Services Program was easy money. And so they traveled to Minnesota enrolled their companies, Chosen Runner LLC and Retzel Real Estate LLC, in the Housing Stabilization Services Medicaid program here in Minnesota. They then returned to Philadelphia and began submitting fraudulent claims to Minnesota Medicaid here, through which they obtained more than $3.5 million in fraudulent Medicaid payments. So the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services pulled the claims data for these 14 programs dating back to 2018. And those 14 programs in Minnesota have cost $18 billion since 2018. Well, I think it's fair to say, and everyone's been saying, I said it before, that our state has done not a good job of minding these programs in terms of responsibility. There's lots of levels of responsibility. There's criminal culpability, obviously, and then there's other accountability. And obviously, I think all of us as a state have to grapple with that. And that's not just prosecutors and law enforcement agents, but regulators and politicians and news media, community leaders. And I think that process, that conversation is starting to happen, and I hope it continues to.